sessions in which we needed to make sure we finished with those items, and so that is the lateness of our meeting. And I will also tell anyone who is watching that we are experiencing networking problems. I believe that is from across the state. There are networking problems with the state system for internet. So at time to time, you may have us cut out. So I'll tell you that ahead of time and apologize. All right. At this time, if everyone could rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Lorene, could you please call the roll?
Linda Avanzato. Here. Belvoy Benson. John Biscarden.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
William Mudge. Kimberly Page.
Here.
Richard Welsh.
Here.
Julia Held. Here. Thank you.
I will state for the record that Ms. Benson called me tonight, and unfortunately, per doctor's suggestion, she was not going to be attending here tonight. And I was told before the meeting that unfortunately Mr. Mudge had a death in the family, so that's why they aren't here. All right, Lorene, if you could call the calendars, please.
November 22nd and 23rd, Thanksgiving recess, schools and offices closed. November 27th, 7 p.m., school committee business meeting, North Kingstown High School. December 3rd, 7 p.m., school committee biennial organizational meeting. That actually says North Kingstown High School, but that will be at Beechwood Senior Center. And there's another meeting, the Facilities Subcommittee meeting originally scheduled for November 15th is not going to be held. That was canceled. Thank you.
All right, and now we have, we'll get right into our presentation. We have a presentation by Barbara Jackson.
I just want to take a brief moment to introduce Barbara Jackson. She and her company, TCP Learning, have been working with the North Kingstown School Department since right around the beginning of July. And the relationship is a very good one. Very impressed with the work she has done, and I've asked her to come tonight to talk to you about how this work is going, and specifically about the North Kingstown Foundation, which is a program that we have put together as a vehicle to help us to create partnerships with the business community. It has been a goal of this committee and of myself to have better relationships with our business community. We're in one of the most vibrant business communities in the state, with Quonset in our backyard, and it's a feeling I know that all of you share, to have a better relationship with that community, with the entire Rhode Island business community, and to set up options for our students beyond the traditional career in tech, where kids have opportunities to learn about the business world all around them and to make some of those connections. So this is a vehicle for that. It's also a vehicle to bring in much needed revenue to help us with many of the district programs that we have. So I'm going to let Mrs. Jackson talk a little bit more about what is going on in that world.
Great. So thank you very much for having me come and brief you on where we are. Is it okay if I put my speakers?
Absolutely.
So I know that all of you have received the PowerPoint, and I don't want to just read it to you because that would be insulting. So let's just kind of talk about what we've done and where we intend to take this. That's okay. This began, the Business Education Partnership that you authorized last fiscal year had really three important conceptual points back of it that we stayed true to. The first was to provide some kind of financial relief. But this isn't financial relief like a big sale on steroids. It's really financial relief that's very targeted towards career pathways, towards curriculum design, and towards strengthening partnerships in the business
Barbara,
yeah.
I'm thinking, why don't you sit down? And I think the mics are better. Can people hear okay? Yeah, you can't. Yeah. I think it would be better if you were using one of the table mics, and we have a couple of seats available. So.
Great.
You want to move the table just a little bit this way?
I think she can see the crowd and she can see us if she's sitting on the end there. That'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is this better for everyone? Oh, goodness, okay. So as I was saying, the concept that we had behind this was to try to find some financial relief for the school department, but it wasn't just bake sale on steroids kind of financial relief. It was really financial relief that was geared towards career pathways, towards curriculum design, and towards a long-term relationship with employers in the state, particularly employers in North Kingstown, with the focus on really inspiring students to be educated about the work environment, about what they might do in their future careers. So, again, we weren't just looking for how can we get checks out of businesses. That's not really the point of this whole thing. So it was financial relief, insight into work environment, and providing job opportunities and also employee opportunities. So it was a two-way street that we were looking to create. So in order to figure out how to do that, we decided that the best thing to do would be to look around the country and see where business partnerships, which is not a brand new concept, where had they been successful in the past and which ones would be most applicable, and sort of cherry pick the best ideas from partnerships that had been successful in the past. And we discovered, at least I discovered, maybe y'all knew this, that there are really kind of three main focuses that these business partnerships have had in the past. These are my words. I'm sure that they would not like to think of themselves like this, but they're sort of the group that falls into the Miami group. And I say Miami because they seem to be the best at doing this. They throw galas and fundraisers. So we're talking about you're a business, you're asked to buy a table for $50,000, and the proceeds of this big posh dinner party go back to the school district. And they generate probably $10 million a year doing that. And that would be lovely, but I don't really think in North Kingstown we're going to be having $10 million dinner parties. I don't see that as a realistic goal.
We'll take 3 of those this year.
Yeah, let me just cook them up. More importantly, I think for where we had set our sights, there was no relationship long-term between the businesses in Miami and the school department. There wasn't any of that curricula design. There wasn't any of that career pathway stuff going on. It was just cash. Cash is good, but it wasn't sort of the whole idea. The second group that we looked at is really, again, these are my words, they're sort of like booster groups on steroids. So it's people who are slapping big ads on their football stadium. And again, they're getting a lot of cash for that. It's going to very targeted programs, and that's a good thing. But again, there was no long-term relationship, there was no sustainability, and it was just advertising. And again, that may become part of our program, but that's really not the goal of this particular program. Which got us to my favorite example, which is Fairfax County, Virginia. So for those of you that may not know Virginia very well, Fairfax County is a county that has over 1 million residents. 1 in 6 of those residents are in the public school system in K through 12. That means that they have over 18,000 students in their school system. It's a county-run district, so again, it's a very different bureaucratic structure than we have here. But what they set out to do 15 years ago was they set out to do exactly what you told me you wanted to do. They set out to say, let us find long-term relationships with businesses that are in our county. Now, granted, Fairfax County is the Beltway, so every corporation that needs to have a representative in Washington is headquartered there. So it's a very different complexion than we have here in terms of the businesses. But they pull in, again, over about $10 million a year of relationship-driven money into their school system. So IBM is there. All of the accounting firms are there. All of the law firms are there. So they go to their schools, and they have a wish, kind of like that old wish book that Sears and Roebuck used to put out, where kids would sort of write to Santa the year before, and that's what would go in the wish book the year after. That's what they do every year with their businesses, and they are very successful in having people write very large checks for long periods of time. They make them sign a contract, a 5-year contract, to develop relationships within a school. Now, when we called them, they're very generous with their time. They're very generous in sharing all of the information and the forms and the lawsuits that have been brought against them and all the different things that they've learned over the course of their many, many years of doing this. They've shared with us. They'll share it with anybody. As I said, they're very generous. But they told me that this is only going to be successful if you keep a couple things in mind. The first thing that you have to keep in mind is you really want a long-term relationship with the business. So that means you're not looking for a check this year and wave goodbye. You want a plan of action that is executed over at least 5 years. You should be willing to take a little bit less money each year in order to have that longevity. Because what you really want is you want to be able to get a kid interested and inspired about some particular career pathway when they're in junior high school and have that same employer be your partner when they graduate, so that if it's a non-college bound student, they can go to work there perhaps, or at least have an interview there. Maybe they can have an internship there. If it is a college bound student, perhaps they'll still be your partner on the way out the door from college. So look for this long-lived relationship more than you look for money. Money is important, but look for the relationship as well as the money. The second thing they said is the only way you get that relationship is from a business's point of view. You have to make it transparent, and you have to make it risk-free, and you have to take all of the potential gossip out of the relationship. So their response to that was to say, when you look around the country, you're going to find that the ones that have the best relationships with their businesses, the longest-lived relationships with their businesses, are school departments that have set up these not-for-profits, where they've said the relationship that you're going to have is with the not-for-profit. The not-for-profit is going to be the interface between you and the school department, so that you, the business person, don't have to come into the high school at high school times and do the high school thing. You make your deal with the not-for-profit who does the political stuff on your behalf with the school department. So the school department is still there. There's still a vibrant member of this relationship, but there's kind of this intermediary that acts on behalf of both parties to make sure that from the business's point of view, they're getting what they need to maintain this long life relationship. The third thing that he told me was that from a business point of view, you're going to get businesses that are willing to partner with you because partnering with school departments is our future, and everybody understands that. But what's really in it for them is not the goodwill and the advertising. What's really in it for them is they want access to the grown-ups, to the parents, for two reasons. Not just because they're the ones who may or may not be purchasing whatever it is that they're advertising. I mean, that's kind of a given. Dave's has a whole lot more in common with the parents than they do with the students, probably. But the real reason that the businesses want to have access to the parents is because the parents are where they assume they're going to get their immediate employees from. So you have to have a way that allows the businesses to have access to advanced education for adults. That without that advanced education component, you don't have to do it right away, but you have to sort of have a pathway for the businesses to continue to educate their employees. That's what's really their hook. They have found in a number of different counties that we spoke to that this component of adult education was essential for keeping businesses in the mix over the long term. So that's what we learned from our research. I'd be happy to take more time later on with you if anybody is interested to learn more. It's in your packet, the counties that I did speak to and the towns that I did speak to. But it led us down a little bit different path than we might have initially started down. And so we did create a not-for-profit. We had our first not-for-profit board meeting on the 31st of October. And we did what we were told by everybody that I spoke to was essential. We had the school department well represented in the not-for-profit. We have the town represented, so the town manager is on our not-for-profit board, and we are inviting both the Chamber of Commerce and a representative from the Quonset Business Park to be on our not-for-profit board because they are the stakeholders for the people who are the businesses in our town. So by the 31st, we were able to get our not-for-profit started, and now we're ready to really begin the hard work of figuring out what does it mean when somebody says, for example, we had two gentlemen who stepped up and said that they would like to do an engineering program. So what does it mean when somebody says, I want to do an engineering program?
Well, we have contracts and we have forms, but we have to figure out what's the infrastructure within the schools so that we don't lose the enthusiasm between the people who want to do the program and the bureaucratic time it takes to do all the important things to make it safe to do that program. So that's our next sort of obstacle that we have to overcome is how do we begin? We have a couple of programs that we're talking with that are much bigger than I want to do an engineering program, even though we're grateful to those two gentlemen that want to do it. But we are speaking with some businesses. We're talking about much bigger programs. And so now we have to figure out, now that we have them, we're going to be putting those tires on the bus as we go down the street. So we have to figure out, what does that mean? I can't tell you the answer to that question yet. But we have some plans in place, and we think we know what it means. And we'll let you know when we have more facts, I think, rather than just sort of good conversations. We have been invited to a number of two events, so I guess that's not a number, it's two events that we would not have been invited to otherwise. One was a day-long conference in Worcester, Massachusetts, that was sponsored by the New England Board of Higher Education. The purpose of that conference was to talk about a new National Science Foundation grant that is dealing with advanced manufacturing, and there's a good possibility that we may become one of the demonstration project sites for that grant. We were also invited to participate in the business partnership day that the Providence Business Students sponsored last week. So making some good contacts. Fortunately, we're not starting from ground zero. My company, as a managed learning services firm, knows a number of businesses that are sort of in the strike zone for who we want to go talk to. But that's pretty much what we've done to date. Our next steps, as I said, are to figure out what does it mean to implement the program. We have to put together a pretty robust communication package. So we do have a website. It's only got one page right now, but it's there. If you go to NorthKingstownFoundation.com, you can see it. And I think that's my report for now. Dick?
Mr. Welch.
A couple of things. So are you a 501c3?
The North Kingstown Foundation is, yes.
I was kind of surprised that there wasn't a member of the school committee on the board, as I would think that it needs buy-in from the school committee. And having that information flow from the board directly into the school committee, while I realize that two members of the administration are on there, they're pretty busy all by themselves, and having someone on the school committee that can relate to what has been going on and what's been talked about, I think is important. And so I would suggest that that be considered. One of the other things that concerns me is the way the budget is structured for the school department is it's a bottom line budget, dollar amount. And I think something needs to be addressed with the town council on the budget, that if you start getting revenue in, how do you address it so that it flows through to the school department without causing a problem with the budget from the town council? That's a tricky item.
Right.
I know you've got the town manager on there, but it's something that I think before you get too far down the road.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we know is that we will not have a relationship with a business if the business thinks that we're doing a bait and switch. So, for example, if somebody decides that they would like to donate $5,000 a year for 5 years to increase the amount of spending in Area X, and we take their $5,000 and yank out $5,000, and so that the increase is zero, their check is going to go away. And that's written into the contract that we will write with them. So there is a level of effort, a maintenance level of effort that will be required.
You need to get that agreement worked out with the town council.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that set our budget bottom line. And if you're going to change the bottom line, then they need to approve of that.
Right.
Okay? Or at least that's my understanding of it. Okay? I've been a proponent of what you're doing. As you know, got the high school involved with doing essentially the same thing with electric vote, and it took a long time for that to develop, so I certainly agree with it. The other thing that I think is important, and with you speaking with these different companies, especially like EB, Senesco, and the plastics people. Torre.
Yep.
They were all interested in continuing education and uptraining in adult education.
That's right. That's right.
And I've tried to get some money into the district to get our adult ed program back up and running, and the state being what it is, they don't have any money.
That's right.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, those companies are very interested in that.
Yes, they are.
So that's not something that should be avoided. It should be something.
Oh, absolutely, it will not be avoided.
And the last thing I wanted to say was, you know, we constantly hear, and this is why I keep on going back to adult ed, of these so-called jobs without trained employees, that we don't have employees that are trained to take the job openings that exist.
Right.
There needs to be a concentration on
Yes.
going in that direction as well.
I agree.
Thank you.
Mr. Beskardin?
Thank you. Just last night or the night before, I think I was watching a program about, and this is very general because I was half watching it until it caught my attention, and by that time all the details had already been talked about. But there were companies that had, and they were light manufacturing, not unlike what we have in Quonset. And they were very disappointed that they could not get people with the proper skills to do even the most entry-level
That's right.
manufacturing or assembly.
Were these Rhode Island companies?
I don't believe, like I said, the details, I was reading and watching and reading, and then when they got to the meat of the program, I started paying attention. But the bottom line was that these 4 or 5 companies were so frustrated that they formed an adult education program on their own.
Right?
And they were able to teach them the specific skills
Right.
that each different company needs, so these people can go right in, and that it reduced their, the education time on the job. The on-the-job training was next to nothing because they already had the basic skills and knowledge that it needed, and it was working magnificently. And I would think that, at least when we talked about this position initially, that was, as Dick said, that was one of the focuses that him and I had agreed upon, and I think that it sounds like you're leaning in that direction too, but it's also getting much bigger, which is good. I mean, the science grant, the science grant that you just mentioned, that is something that I don't know that I would have ever even imagined that being part of your job.
Well, just to be clear, I wish that we would be getting the grant.
No, you were at the meeting. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mislead. But you at least
That would be too much good news for one night.
you were invited to a conference regarding this, and that's I guess that's an unintended consequence
Right.
of your position. So that's great. But I really think it's important that we don't lose focus on the kids in North Kingstown School District that aren't necessarily college material.
Right, and that's what the grant is for those kids. So,
One other question. You said you had companies in your strike zone. Can you share some?
no. Because
They don't know they're in the strike zone?
A, they don't know they're in the strike zone, and B, the ones that we're talking to, it's too premature, I think, to speak publicly about who they are. Because I need to be able to negotiate, certainly coming back to you and getting a little bit more agreement before we would sign anything, but I don't want to prematurely take those negotiations off the rail.
Are you, do you give some sort of bi-monthly report to Dr. Auger on these companies that you're talking to? I mean, how do you formally educate Dr. Auger on your activities?
She reports to me at least once a month, and usually a lot more than that, but once a month in writing with everything that's been going on. We've had a lot more interaction than that, obviously, because we've been putting together this foundation. One of the things that I'm very impressed with, the word foundation, it is the name of this, this vehicle that we're using to create these relationships, but it also is the right word for where we are at this point. We have a foundation where we didn't have one before. We have a person who is very well networked in North Kingstown and in the state, member of the Chamber of Commerce. Our executive board will include a representative from the Chamber of Commerce and from the Economic Development at Quonset. So we're going to have the right people in place to lead us, and a person who is actively seeking this out. We haven't had that before. I think that's the problem with a lot of school district staff. We're so busy in the work that we do from day to day, and we always say, boy, wouldn't it be great if we had that kind of a grant or that kind of a partnership, but making the commitment to have somebody seek it out who is this knowledgeable is good for us. So, it is what I anticipate is to have a lot of interaction with Barbara this year, obviously, as things start to grow. I don't want to get far ahead of ourselves, but we've done the right thing at first and set the foundation. And then as things progress, that those things would be in front of this committee and in front of the town council. We see a flow chart where any person within the system, say an administrator at the high school or a teacher at the high school or a business person or Barbara or any of us, to have an idea that would go directly to Barbara, get the right people in the room, the right teachers from the high school, the administration, could be a middle school program. Work with those people, get all the details taken care of, take it to the foundation, and then if this involves a donation to the district, that involves school committee approval. It would come to us, and it would involve the town council being involved to authorize that as well. So they're going to have interaction. One of the points from Mr. Welch is, we wanted to keep the town council members and the school committee members off of this foundation because they will have a role, and we were worried about, the role of an elected official starting to kind of politicize the foundation. They will be involved. We want them to be involved, and they need to, and by law they need to be involved. But we wanted to keep it distinct in that regard as well. Just like when we get a major donation to the district from the Booster Club, for instance, that's something the school committee would approve of. Same kind of functionality there.
This board, this is such a pipe dream, who knows, but I would hope that you could think of everybody who's not on the executive committee of this board in the same way as people who are on the American Ballet Theater board are. They are there because they've got deep pockets and a huge passion. End of story. That's their credential for being on that board. So that's who we imagine our non-executive board members are. They're business people who have a passion about the partnership with education and have a lot of resource, which is not only money, that they're willing to put into that passion. And so we've reserved our board memberships for them because it's a privileged position. Mrs. Avanzato.
I guess so. Yeah. No, Kim says I'm done. So I'm done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
You can give another question. That's how she does it politely, John. I've had it done to me before. Thank you very much for the presentation. I like a lot about it. I like the fact that it's not focusing on the superficial. And we've had some conversations about banners and things like that, advertising, but it does seem like that type of thing could just go away very quickly, and it isn't about a relationship, like you said, and it doesn't have that sustainability. And also, as a resource for our students, once we get linked to these businesses, I think that's excellent, to have both ends of it, the financial end of it and the vocational tied together. So I really think this is the right approach. I was going to make the comment about school committee members and town council members not being on the board for that reason, but I don't see why they couldn't either attend once in a while or, getting the updates. But I like what you said in your PowerPoint as far as making sure that everything is done fairly and everything's done by RFP, so we don't have any, because with a foundation like this can come claims of favoritism or concerns about that, so that will help avoid those problems. A couple of quick things. The issue about the money flow, that probably needs to be addressed by the town council and the school committee cooperatively as to how that would be handled. We've had so many discussions. We have a policy on donations,
that we've gone around about for a while, but we have a pretty good policy that took a long time to craft. And we'll need to look at it again with a new view towards what we're doing here, I think. I don't think that the town council would need to approve. I think the school committee would need to approve of the donations, but I could be wrong, to the school district. I could be wrong about that, and we'll need to talk to Mary Ann, and we'll need to look at our policy and just make sure we have that all in order. I would just make a quick point, and I'm not saying that this PowerPoint did that, but you mentioned the businesses in Quonset, and I think that's a good link to have. And I see the Chamber of Commerce. Hopefully, we can also focus on the ones outside of,
absolutely.
in particular outside, because they're the hurting businesses, you know. Some in Whitford, some in Post Road, and we can work with them, you know, with the Chamber.
Absolutely.
Great. I kind of figured. I just wanted to mention that on the record. One other thing, the executive director of the foundation, that position, will that be a paid position eventually, or how will that work?
It's me, and I am paid.
Oh, okay. All right, then we're all set. We already knew that. I think that's all I had. Yes, and thank you. I think it's going in the right direction. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Great.
Other questions? Well, I will say that I've been sitting in on the meetings with the foundation and Barbara Jackson, so that I know what's going on, but I am not on the board. So I'll just make that clear. But I have been very impressed with Barbara's enthusiasm and the ideas that she's been bringing. So I really feel like we're off to a great start. So thank you very much.
Great. And there will be soon. There will be a link on the website. I mean, my email is on the website. You guys have my home phone number, so you can call it at any time. But our intention is to put on the website, if people have ideas, just send them in. I mean, who knows what will happen. So stay tuned.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
All right, that brings us to Superintendent Report.
I just want to say, you know, it seems like a long time ago that we had a hurricane. Remember that? There's been so much happening, but I sent out something on email, but I would like to say at this meeting how much I appreciate the work of Mrs. King, Mr. Tremblay, our maintenance staff for, being there every step of the way. The preparation was tremendous. We were, prepared for everything that came our way. I also want to thank Mr. Embry, Chief Mulligan, and Mr. Bergeron. They were also instrumental, even inviting us into their emergency preparation room with their whole staff to, look at this as events were occurring and make the decisions that we did. And things went very smoothly. We had the interruption of 2 days of school, but, relative to a lot of other communities, we fared very well. And a lot of that was due to excellent preparation from all involved. So I just wanted to extend my appreciation for that.
Nothing else?
That's all I have for now.
Okay. All right, that brings us to routine items. Lorene?
We're in recess right now for executive session, so nothing today.
Okay, we have, now we come to the consent agenda. Are there items that members would like to exempt from the consent agenda? Yes, Mr. Welch?
D1 and E6.
Mrs. Avanzato?
C2.
Mr. Buskard, did I see your hand up?
No, they've been covered. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mrs.
I'd like to
Avanzato?
offer a motion to pass the consent agenda with the exception of those items.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing no hands. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes. That brings us to the first item, item number C2. Mrs. Avanzato.
I wasn't present for that meeting. That's the minutes, right? Am I on the right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
The executive session minutes of October
abstain
23rd.
From that vote.
Motion to approve C2?
Second.
It is a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving C2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Abstain.
opposed? One abstention. All right, that brings us to D1. Mr. Welch.
Yeah, I just wasn't clear. This is an asset of the school department and the town. Do we have the authority to in fact donate this to a scholarship fund?
Yes, it's our bus.
That was my question. Make a motion to approve D1.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion on D1? Mr. Buscardin.
I just have one question. In the attachment regarding that, it said that, I don't have it open, but try to check my memory here, that parts have been taken off that could be used in other buses. Have we done enough of that? I mean,
We have.
okay, I mean, there's nothing left.
No, and it's been nearly a year since this was approved by this school committee to be taken out of commission, and it's been well used in that year.
Okay. I just want to make sure we, everything we could possibly use off of it.
Mrs. Avanzado?
Just a quick point about the school department donating. Ordinarily, we don't look to do that. We were looking to have people donate to us, but in this case, this is going towards a scholarship that will benefit one of our students, so I think it's different in that respect. So otherwise, I'd be, questioning this and maybe not approving it.
And also, we are likely to net 0 to nothing because it would need to be advertised. And advertising costs quite a bit of money in the paper these days, and it's really not worth a heck of a lot. So really, when you look at it, even forgetting the staff time to do it, we're likely to net 0 to nothing on this transaction if we were to advertise it and have someone come and take it.
Mr. Strisi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to remind the committee and the administration as well, I understand why we're going about doing it this way, and I support and agree with going about doing it this way, but we do have a policy that speaks to disposal of school property.
What's that, Larry? Can you tell us?
DF?
DF or DN?
Yeah, Kim's the policy. She's like the
guru.
I wasn't trying to... No, it's fun. I was just...
The policy basically speaks to the process that needs to be followed in order for us to donate goods or dispose of goods, and basically the school committee needs to approve it, which is what we're doing tonight. And also, I think the other portion of it is to actually go about the process of advertising it and try to sell it for some revenue for the school district. But I think Mrs. King is covered that, and I agree with her position on that we would actually incur a cost to the district to advertise this piece of property that we're trying to dispose of. So it just, common sense wise, it doesn't make much sense to go about it that way, and I agree with this, but in the future, I'm just reminding the committee that when we do come upon disposal of property or donations of property, we do have a policy that speaks specifically to that. So, thank you. Right. Thank you.
Right, just to clarify, our policy DN on school properties disposal basically says that when equipment, books, and materials are worn out, obsolete, that it's subject to they notify us, and then the superintendent is authorized to dispose of such things, or if they have a resale value by selling them to the highest bidder. But, okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other further questions? Motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, Mr. Welch, E6.
Yes, looking at the high school sport coaches for the winter season 2012-13, I'm looking at the basketball where we have a head coach, 2 assistant coaches, and a volunteer. If my memory serves me correct, a high school basketball team is 9 to 12 players. You have a stipend cost of over $11,000, and then you look just below it for the girls' basketball team, which I would assume would be the same size as the boys' basketball team, and it's some $4,000 less because there's one less assistant coach. I've made a point of this before about the stipends, the amount of stipends. I really think it's gotten out of hand, but I don't understand why 4 people are needed to coach maybe 12 boys and 3 to coach 12 girls.
I can answer that.
Oh, okay.
Because the girls are better behaved and they need less supervision than the
It is something that we have as something that we would like to negotiate when we're negotiating with our teachers. That's a contractual.
Okay, that's only part of it, though, Doctor. The other part is, why do we have 2 assistants and not just 1?
I believe all of these positions are contractual. That's my
So
point.
it's contractual to have 2 assistant basketball coaches for the boys, and contractual only have 1?
That's my understanding. I'm not saying I understand it.
Right.
And it was put in place before I had a shot at it. So, but it is an area that I would like to review. I know there actually is a rhyme and reason to all this. I just don't know what it all is, and many times I don't understand it when we're up here approving these things. So it is something that I want to go over in some detail, and I think for many different cycles of the contracts, this hasn't really been taken up that much as an issue.
Right, it's not.
I would like to have this tabled.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to be very brief. I don't want to belabor the point, but we have had this discussion numerous times, and I know this is a concern that we've raised as a committee, and I know this is something that Mrs. King has actively been working on. The amounts of these stipend salaries are determined by a formula in the contract. The number of coaches determined for each sport is determined by a formula in the contract. And I think that section of the contract, really diving into that section of the contract and peeling it back, has really been neglected over the past several contract negotiation cycles. And I know as a committee, we've all discussed that, and I think we all feel the same way, that it's definitely an area of the contract that the next negotiation cycle, which I'm sure will begin shortly after the holidays, as that contract will be expiring in 2013. That's certainly an area that we need to look at, and I know that Mrs. King has acknowledged that, and in an area that she's actively looking at. And again, it's purely, and I know it's purely from a cost perspective, you know what I mean? I really think that this whole area, I agree with you, is totally gotten away from us. And I'd rather see the money better spent on the programs and on the students. Mm-hmm. You know, I think this whole stipend area is totally just grown by leaps and bounds, and I think we've really lost the handle on it.
Mr. Busgarden.
2 things really quick. I wasn't aware that the amount of I thought I was aware that the dollar amount was tied to the contract. I wasn't aware that the amount of coaches was also tied to the contract, so I apologize for that.
Well, one theory that we have down this end of the table is that I'm going to let you explain it because you know it better than I do.
During the summer, when we have the summer sports camps, some of the teams at that time raise money so that they can have more money in their coffers for during the year. And I know that this summer, the boys' basketball team specifically wanted the freshman basketball team in place, and so they were rather aggressive in making sure that they had a really good summer camp, and so they raised a lot of money. And so my guess is that, I know that I'm pretty sure that they got their freshman boys' basketball team up and running so that they were able to fund that. And so what you're looking at here is essentially 3 teams for the boys, that they have the basketball team, the JV team, and they self-funded to do their freshman team. So it's one of those things of, because we said last year we wouldn't fund any of the freshman team.
that's right.
Because we did have the freshman football that also we're doing some fundraising in the beginning of the year so that they could play. So my guess, and again, this is a guess, but my guess is that probably the one coach is for the freshman team, and that's probably the volunteer coach. And then the other ones are between JV and varsity. So that's, that's how you do that. And, they've done what we've asked. We said we don't have the money to fund it, and so they made sure they went out and raised the money so that they could do it on their own. So in some ways, it's a sort of thing of, if you then deny them, you're punishing them for something that they have said, we want to do this on our own. We'll probably have similar issues come up for ice hockey here, because the boys ice hockey team raised about $19,000 this summer in order that they could play. So it's the sort of thing of, they took to heart what we said, and they went out and they made sure that they got the funds that they could continue.
Well, and that's good. I mean, that shows resolve and teaches the kids a great lesson that, sometimes you got to work for something that you want. It's not always just given to you. But I think Dick's question still remains, why we have, back out the volunteer, why we're paying for 3 coaches for the boys and 2 for the girls. I think that's...
We believe we're also looking at a JV coach here.
Well, the way Kim explained it, the JV, so there's no JV girls? Is that what you're saying? Just varsity girls?
There's JV girls? No, I'm pretty sure there's a JV girls basketball team.
Okay, so everything being equal, if in fact the volunteer boys coach is the freshman team, then between JV and varsity, the boys have 3 and the girls have 2. And I think that's a question that, if it is contractual, I think with that and amongst other things should be addressed with this. Also, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Auger, for getting this, you having your folks compiling this ahead of time, so we're not approving coaches in the middle of the season. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Avanzado.
I agree with John that this is, and I agree it's wonderful that the students are raising the funds, and it's great that they raised $19,000. It's amazing. But the committee needs to be told all of this information, because we don't know that. We're sitting here looking at money on an agenda. We don't know whether they've raised the money for the program and we're approving the coaches for it. It's just not entirely clear to me.
Well, I don't think that the last discussion I had with the ice hockey parents is that they had not raised money for a coach, and so that is why you see a 0 beside the 2 ice hockey coaches' names.
Okay.
They raise money for rink time. They raise money for, I think that also the rink time is the biggest, but it also would be the referees and equipment that they would need.
So it's a bit of a difficult issue if the teams have gone out and raised their own funds, for us then to intercede and say we're going to make everything even and distribute it evenly when the teams have raised differing amounts. That's kind of a tough situation. I think that needs to be looked at later, not right this moment. I don't feel comfortable stripping the coach away from the team that raised the more money. I don't know how you handle it.
No, you're right. If some of that money, if one of those 338250s are coming out of funds raised, then it should be noted on there so we know, right?
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I agree.
So the question is before us. I mean, their seasons have not started. I think they start after Thanksgiving, as I know what, I only know the sports that my kids are in, so I know indoor track, okay? Indoor track doesn't start until after Thanksgiving. But the question then is, are we going to approve the coaches now or not? Mr. Cerisi.
Make a chair to table, make a motion to table this agenda item for our next meeting until we can get further clarification on the questions that have been raised by the committee members.
I'll second that.
Dr. Auger.
I would hope that you don't vote that way. I don't have any doubt in Howie Haig and the work that he's doing, that this is all legitimate and consistent with the way we've been working for some time now. I'd be happy to get you the answers that you're looking for, but this committee has asked me, and Mr. Prescott just brought it up, about the timeliness of this happening, getting these things done before the season begins. We have done that. And to slow them down right now, I don't know if there are practices lined up for basketball and these other sports right now, but I feel that these things have been done appropriately. I don't know all the details, but I don't know if, Dr. Kenworthy, you have any sense of any of this yourself, but I just don't feel like I feel comfortable saying we're not going to do this for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we delay it 2 weeks, you will be into the start of the season. And you'll basically, these coaches won't be able to start with the teams if we're not approving them, because we don't meet until after Thanksgiving.
Kim, that never stopped them before.
But now he's trying to comply with what we asked. So
Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy that they went through all this work, but Mr. Welch brings up a very interesting question, and I think it deserves an answer. That's all. Why, if the teams are equal, everything being equal, and maybe they're not, and maybe we need to be told that, but if everything's being equal, why do we have why do we have one more basketball coach for the boys and for the girls?
So the only thing I can offer is in line with what Mrs. Page was saying, where I think the set number of coaches that comes out of the school department budget, in the athletic budget for the coaches would be equal. So anything additional that you see for the boys team would have been through money they raised through the sports camp or fundraising. And I know that the start date for winter sports is, it'll be the Monday before the next school committee meeting. So.
So I guess what I'm saying is that you could always approve this with the knowledge that you will get more information.
Some different format.
Because, yes, Mr. Streetsy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll withdraw my motion. The intent is not to delay or obstruct this, but it's like, I've been sitting on this committee for 6 years now, and every time we get to this stuff, it's the same questions and the same problems every time. If we could just get some clarity on this and get the information that we look for on this, so maybe we can avoid this discussion and simply vote to approve these items. So, again, I'll remove my motion and just ask that we can... it's not just one person on this committee, and it's not just one school committee. It's been 6 years, and several different people raised the same questions and the same concerns. So it's not isolated to one person or one committee. There's obviously a problem here. So can we please get it resolved and get the information on here, and we can avoid these discussions, these lengthy discussions, and get to more important business.
Dr. Auger.
I agree. The discussions that I've been a part of have always revolved around, doing this in a timely manner. And so I'm trying to do that. I did not see this coming. If someone had been able to ask me this question even today during the workday, I could have found out the answers and had them ready for you. So, I just don't feel like I don't think it's anyone's intention to slow things down. I just am worried that if we vote to table this, it will slow things down. That would be an unintended consequence. That's what I'm worried about.
And I'll withdraw my motion to table, and I'll offer a motion to approve, but I would please ask if we could, through correspondence or email, if we could get updated as a committee and the information that committee members are looking for. And again, I don't mean to drag this discussion out, and it's really... I don't think any of this is intentional or malicious. I just think that there's a disconnect here, and we need to get on the same page.
Second, but only the first part.
As far as the information that we're looking for, so, thank you.
I second the motion to approve with the proviso that we get the information in an email.
Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving E6, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to unfinished business. And our first item is the CIP existing bond, future bond.
I just want to update the school committee that at the next school committee meeting on November 27th, I will be providing you with the proposed CIP information. I've been working with Phil Bergeron from the town and Jim Grundy, who is the chair of our facility subcommittee, on the information to be presented to the Asset Management Committee. Phil Bergeron has communicated that they would like to have me at their meeting in early December. So I do apologize. I wanted to have that to you this meeting, but was not able to get it together in time. It mostly focuses around the bond work that needs to be done, the recent bond work, as well as hopefully using some of the old bond money for Wickford Middle School that we've discussed in the past. So there are not a lot of changes to it, but I will have that document for everybody at the next meeting.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to item B, the architectural design central office building, DES. That will be you, Dr. Ajay.
This is a follow-up to a presentation that we made 3 weeks ago at our last meeting, and it concerns the usage of buildings in the district, specifically the admin building and Davisville Elementary. 3 weeks ago, I asked that tonight you would vote to approve the authorization of some money to begin an analysis concerning the some retrofitting of the admin building and the Davisville Elementary building to use those spaces better. And I'd like to I've had lots of questions from the committee and from some people in the community as well. I'd like to take a little time tonight to kind of go over some of the details about where we are with this, what kind of timeline we're looking at, and the justification for this. So I'll try to do this relatively quickly. First I want to point out that this is a direct result of our strategic plan and in line with that plan. One of the action steps in our plan, for instance, is to examine in-district opportunities that support students with disabilities. And what that means is that we have a number of students who are currently going out of the district and we're paying exorbitant amounts of money in out-of-district tuition, where in a number of those cases we can do the work just as well, if not better, ourselves. And so it's a matter of being organized to accept those students and to take this on. And I believe that in doing so, we can use our space more efficiently and we can save the district a lot of money that can obviously be used for other very important things that we need to do. So this plan has 4 goals. One is to find significant financial savings for the North Kingstown School Department. One is to use these ancillary building spaces more efficiently. One is to find the right space for the right program. Right now, in a number of cases where we have a new program or we have a program that needs a space, that program may go to a place not because it's the most ideal place in the district, but because it's an available space. And that's not always the best way to work. I think in doing this, we can kind of reset the clock a little bit and start putting the pieces together in the right places where they make the most sense and where they're with kind of like programs. And also, as I mentioned last time, this is not part of this proposal, but it is something that has been an important issue for me, and I know for many members of the committee, that is to consider full-day kindergarten universally in the North Kingstown School Department. This is something that may be an issue that I propose this year. I believe that we have an opportunity this year that we didn't have in the past because space is becoming available with enrollment and all. But also, if we're going to be looking at the way we use our buildings, particularly an elementary school that is mostly not being used, I think it's important to bring this issue up now and to consider it in that if we commit to the use of that building for something else and then a month or two or a year or two down the line determine that we want to do full-day K and have missed an opportunity to use some available space, we could be sorry for that. So, I think it's important just to have this, to consider this, and this is something, a similar presentation that I will be making in the next month or two about full-day kindergarten. So the guiding assumptions, and this is something that many of you have asked. I kind of gave some very vague details last time about, the potential for savings. I asked Dr. Bazzullo and Kathy Perry, our Assistant Special Education Director, Dr. Humbird, Mrs. King, myself, we worked very closely on this and looked at what kinds of savings we could be talking about. We have identified 8 students who are currently at Bradley South County Hospital that could be serviced at a newly created North Kingstown Alternative Learning Center, which is what we could potentially be calling the admin building, should it turn into that. That could be at a savings of $370,000 in tuitions that we are not paying to Bradley Hospital. We have also identified 8 students who are currently being considered for outplacements next year. Those students could also be serviced either within that building or within programs that are kind of connected to that building, and I'll talk a little bit about that. That we would have a better able to even service elementary age kids. Those would still be in the elementary schools, but this program coming out of the central office or the admin building would be something that could help to oversee those kids. So there would be like an alternative learning program in elementary schools, but they would be connected to the main alternative learning program in the district. So most of the work for middle and high school students would take place in this building, whereas the elementary students would be in the elementary schools, but partially serviced, a team approach by the special educators who are working in this building, and partially with the current model that we have with the principal and the special educators in the building. So we could do all of that better. So we have that as an assumption, that we could be looking at $400,000 to $800,000 in savings over what we're currently doing. Another assumption is the cost of retrofitting the central office and the DE building, if we're going to look at that as an office building. While costly, will be more cost-effective in the long term than continuing with the current special education model. In other words, that this savings is year to year, $400,000 to $800,000. So even if we're spending $500,000 to $1 million this year to retrofit those 2 buildings, that's a one-time cost, where we're saving this $400,000 to $800,000 every year from here on in. And so, as you can guess, it wouldn't take too long to make up that initial investment and then to have long-term savings that we can depend on year after year. Another assumption is that moving the central office to Davisville Elementary Building will allow for more and better space for the central office work. It will allow for increased interaction with district programs such as Links, Cozy, Working Together for Wellness, and will expand our conference and professional development space, and will increase possibilities for rental of professional development in conference space. We're also a guiding assumption is the use of the D building, that's the building right behind our central office, will be for, like programs there as well. Technology, maintenance, transportation, more appropriate than for the student programming that's in there right now. So what we're looking to explore in the next 2 months is the feasibility of the cost of using the admin building and as an alternative learning center to service 15 to 20 special education students, all of which would be middle and high school. It would have the PASS program, which is an in-school suspension program currently in the D building, and the alternative learning program, which is also in the D building. In total, the building would serve approximately 40 students at any one time and would require increased staffing of approximately 3 district personnel. We would have a coordinator, a clinical social worker, and a part-time psychologist consultant that we feel we would need for increased staffing. The other staffing that would be in this building are already in the district and would simply be transfers from other places in the district. Our assumption is that the expense for these additional staff would be approximately $215,000 a year, all in. Those are our assumptions right now. We need more time to really look at this closely, and as you all know, special education is a moving target. The kids we have today will not be the kids we have even tomorrow morning. Kids are moving in, kids are moving out, and when a special education student arrives with significant special needs, you're talking big money. A typical Bradley hospital tuition is $45,000. They can go up to $90,000 and more. So depending on the needs of the student, you're looking at a lot of costs to the district, some of which we can plan for and some of which we cannot plan for. And we've got burned on that in the past, where we realized mid-year that, oh, gee, we need even more money than we thought to help us pay for, some special ed costs. So the construction, another item to be explored is the cost of construction and moving the admin building to DE in the retrofit over there. We need informed projections about expenditures and timeline associated with the conversion of the building. So for that, we're going to need an architect, someone who knows this business well and who knows what kinds of things need to be changed, how much it's going to cost us to change those things, and what kind of timeline we're talking about. You're going to see on this that I have a pretty aggressive timeline to make all of these things happen by September. We're already in, that's all, because we're already in November of the year before, it's a very aggressive timeline. In all likelihood, this could take longer to happen. And you need to know a little bit more about, the details about, I think the assumption on the behalf of many is full-day kindergarten, you have to be crazy. It would cost way too much. I don't think it will cost too much. I think we actually have an opportunity here. But also, one thing that we need to know as far as this is concerned is, what will it mean in terms of space? And if it has any impact on that, it may change the way we decide to move on this question. So the cost projections are on the top of page 3. And so, our rough estimate, and this is Dr. Roger speaking, who has no experience in construction, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 to $1 million between the two buildings in the kind of retrofits that we would need to do. Again, that could be incredibly low or it could be incredibly high. I don't know for sure. And we would probably be looking at a roughly $215,000 for additional staff. The revenue from this would be roughly $400,000 to $800,000 annually, and in the out years this could turn into more, because once we have an established program, we can start to even take in even more kids that right now we would not attempt to handle yet. But we could build the infrastructure to even expand on this model that I'm proposing here. So we're looking at a regular savings that would bring this one-time cost back in roughly 3 to 5 years. If the construction costs are low, it'll come back even faster. If the construction costs are high, it might take a little longer. And would expect savings of roughly $200,000 to $600,000 in all the following years, because now that that building cost is out of the way. The timeline for this, and this is again very aggressive. Tonight we're at November 13th, and what I'm looking for, even though it says on the agenda $18,000, I'm looking for no more than $15,000 to be approved to get architectural drawings and cost estimates as to what it would take to do this kind of work. Once I have that, and I'm hoping I would have that by the middle of January or so, I would come back to you on January the 8th or the 22nd to propose to you, now that I have all the information that I need, clearer estimates from special education on who's moving and how much it would save us, and clear estimates from a qualified architect on what this would mean in terms of building, time, and all of that, and cost. Then I can give you an informed proposal on how I would like to proceed, and you can take it up from there. And then on January 22nd, the next meeting, you would vote. If that were to be approved, and if this, what is approved is anything close to what I just described, we would need to consult, in my opinion, with the town council to look at our CIP. These will be building costs, one-time building costs, and I believe, I've already had discussions with Mr. Embry, and I'm not committing him to anything or anything, but he seemed very intrigued by the idea, and he did see a lot of savings in this, and I know Mr. Welch, being on the town council, will be happy to support the CIP to make this kind of thing happen. I'm not committing you, Mr. Welch. But I believe this is something that we would need it to be a team effort between the school committee and the town council in recognition of long-term savings. This would be money every year that we would not have to be asking the town council for. And so we would be looking at then the usual RFPs going out for the work. We would probably need the work at Davisville Elementary to happen first to prepare it for the central office to move out and to move into Davisville Elementary. And then as soon as that occurs, then the work would begin on the present admin building to turn it into an alternative learning center. And again, very aggressively, most optimistic projection here would be that this could be ready by September of 2013. And we would have all of these things in place and start realizing some of the savings that I just mentioned. If any of this gets slowed down, and as you all know, these things typically do from time to time, we could be looking at, a later date for that beginning, possibly starting January of 14 or even the following year. But we would have the plan in place and a vision for where we're going at that point. So all I'm asking for tonight is to get this started. There is not a proposal on the table to do all this work. There is simply a proposal in front of you for $15,000 to authorize that that we can seek an architect, town architect, to give us some figures, give us some drawings and projections on costs and time that it would take to make the adjustments we would need to be ready for Davisville Elementary to be an office building and for the admin building to be an alternative learning center. Thank you.
All right. Questions, comments? Mr. Cerisi.
I'm just going to make a quick comment. I don't have any questions. We were provided this information earlier, so I did have an opportunity to review it. One quick comment is this isn't, it's a new plan or new proposal, but the concept itself isn't new. If you recall, we had a discussion as a committee a couple of years back that the plan at the time was to retrofit Wickford Elementary School and coexist there with the school administration offices and the town hall municipality offices. So it would be a town hall / school administration building. So if that bond to retrofit Wickford Elementary School was successful, obviously that bond was not successful. And we discussed at that time, Plan B was, if that bond was not successful, to look at the potential for other uses for the current admin building and moving the admin to Davisville Elementary School. So we have had this discussion before, the overall bird's eye view of the concept. And now, obviously, we need to get a little bit further into the details and the reality of that. That's one comment. The second comment that I wanted to make is I think, obviously, there's several steps that need to be taken in this process before this could potentially become a reality. But as we get, when and if we get further towards this being, actually being a reality as far as the uses of the facilities, I would like to see a presentation done by the special education department for the CELAC group. So we bring parents in on this process, and we get some feedback and input from them on this process and on this idea. I want to be inclusive. I certainly don't want to add more meetings for special education or more work for special education, but I think it's important that as we move through this process, we don't have misinformation out there as we so frequently do when we try to do things a little bit differently and a little bit creative, and we get the right information out there, the factual information to the parents and to the community, and we involve them in the process, and I think that'll make things go a heck of a lot smoother for everyone involved. So, thank you.
Mr. Welch?
Can I assume that this will be going through facilities, Dr. Ogier?
Will be,
Facilities Subcommittee?
I don't see in your timeline anything for ride approval, which I think you're going to need.
That would have to be all part of the project once it gets approved to move forward.
I mean, it's something that you're going to need.
That's why the timeline is very aggressive.
And I don't know, is there a possibility of either state funding or grants for any of this?
I don't know.
And the
State funding, probably not.
the makeup of the 16 students that you have in your budget, are some of those transition students?
No.
So transition and beyond, above and beyond those 16 students that you're showing?
Yeah.
yes. The 16 students are students who are either currently out of district or are in our plans to be out of district starting next year.
Aren't your transitions right now out of district?
No, they are in district. They're at Davisville Elementary.
Okay.
So the other students, there would be, that program may end up also at the admin building, that transition program. There's potential for that. And there's also, as I said, the PASS program and the ALP. So in all, you're probably looking at about 40 students. And that's one of the reasons why we felt, the admin building is ideal. It's near the high school. It's not all that far from Wickford Middle. So if the kids need to interact with those schools, that's very helpful. But it's also a building more suited to about 40 students and staff, whereas Davisville Elementary, if we tried to do that, I mean, we'd still have the same problem. We'd be using just a few of the rooms, and there'd be a whole wing or two that wasn't being used. So,
I heard you say that you'd, at some later date, you'd be looking to go to other districts. I personally would rather see you go as soon as possible and as aggressively as possible to other districts. That's just my feeling on that. And I guess my last concern would be, other than my support for doing this, which I do support it, is where is the money going to come from? We don't get CIP money, and we don't get the money we request for in our budgets. That's certainly going to be one of the major considerations going forward.
Mr. Cerisi, I know that you
Yeah,
had...
I'm sorry. I just had a quick additional comment, and thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. One is, Mary, if we could, Mary and Carol and Mary King, if we could look into the possibility of receiving some funding through the CRP grant funding for the retrofitting of the administration building, if it's going to be used for special education purposes. I'm sure you guys know a heck of a lot more about it than I do, but it may be eligible to receive some grant funding through the CRP for that. Something worth looking into if possible. And secondly, just to back up a little bit on my previous comments, as far as involving the parents and involving the community, and I mentioned this the last time we met and this presentation was made, is that, children receiving, I'm a proponent of providing services for children in district when possible, because I always consider the in-district the least restrictive environment. And there's always going to be that population of students that we can't adequately provide services for in district, and they're better suited for the specialties and expertise provided by the out-of-district placements. But again, I think it's important to involve the parents on the ground floor of this process, because you may meet resistance or concern from parents when you talk about bringing children from a program or services they're receiving out of district that they're successful with. And I think there needs to be some communication and assurances that the services and programs that the child needs will be provided in district, and so on and so forth. And I think it's going to be crucial to really involve the parents at that beginning point. So
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, today, a discussion with Kathy Perry, I think I mentioned to you last time that Ms. Perry at Charahoe has done something very similar to this about 8-10 years ago. And she was talking about that piece of it, the communication with the parents, the anxiety from the parents who are comfortable with a program, even if it's not, in one of these 8 schools, but it's a program they're comfortable with,
right.
and now they're going to something that they don't know yet. So
It's more the fear of the unknown and,
Sure.
and being in a spot that's comfortable. And what we may offer and do here may be much better than the situation that they're currently in. It's just, as you said, you'll see that anxiety.
Right.
And so, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mr. Busgarden and Mrs. Avanzato.
What, do you want to go first? Or
No, I dropped my...
No, you slammed your pen on the
Yeah,
table.
I saw it.
I actually dropped
I saw it. No, I saw it. If you want to go, you can go ahead. Just to dovetail on what Mr. Cerisi was saying, that not only do you have, there's the comfort level, and I'm sure folks get established, they feel with their programs they've been going through. There's also the, the track record that those programs have. Here you take, the one school you mentioned in here is what, the Bradley School, right? Bradley, South County. They're, I'm sure they have quite a long and healthy track record. So you're taking, you're going to try to convince somebody to take their child out of some place that they're only comfortable with, but they know that, that this has been going. They've been doing it over and over again, so they kind of have it figured out. And so it is important to get the buy-in at the ground level. I agree. The question I have, Dr. Ajay, on the first page, at the bottom, items to be explored, the full-day K, and that's really the last time I think I see it mentioned, especially when it comes to dollars and cents. So, am I right that all the $15K that you're asking is just for the has nothing to do with exploring full-day K and just exploring the special needs?
Right. When we originally had 18,000 on there, it was, we were thinking, and our thinking was to include asking the architect to do, to give us some advice on if Davisville Elementary turned into some kind of a preschool center or an all kindergarten type of center. Since the presentation, we have done a lot of digging, and I feel that for the most part we could fit full-day K in the existing buildings that we have now. So I feel like I can safely take that one off the table and not spend any money for an architect to get that estimate for us, because I don't think we would need it. But again, I just want to be mindful as we go through this that, as we're talking about using a lot of district space, that I wouldn't want to necessarily commit to it if I felt like, we could be turning this all around in 6 months if we decide we're going to do something with kindergarten that requires the use of similar space, or, doesn't give us some other options that we thought we could have. So I just wanted to mention that. But it's not as big a factor as I originally thought 3 weeks ago.
So, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is that because you think it can be facilitated through the existing schools and existing classrooms, that we're not going to spend any money on that, and we're just going to wait till full-day K is mandated by the state?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. Sorry about that. I'm still looking at full-day K, and I would see that as I like the idea of going to full-day K, and I'm also working on that separately. I'm not quite ready with that as a proposal either, but I think that these two things can have a relationship with one another. That I wouldn't want to make moves on the reorganization and find out that we've lost some opportunities for full-day K, whether it happens to be mandated or whether it's something we just choose to do on our own. So I'm just trying to be mindful of that. I can't think of any other type of program in the district right now that I have on my mind that may require the use of space like full-day K would.
And I just, one last thing, I would just like to commend you for putting together such a detailed proposal after speaking with you late on Friday afternoon. Quite
My
impressive.
pleasure. Thank you. I didn't, when we last spoke, I didn't realize that there was a desire for this level of specificity. So that's what we spent some time over the weekend and a lot of time today putting this together. And I want to thank Dr. Pizzullo and Kathy Perry for their help on that. They were really working hard today to figure out, kid by kid, who we're talking about. So it's important to know this.
See, Ms. Page, I told you he could put it together.
Mrs. Avendato.
Now that John's taken everything I was going to say,
I'll throw your pen down then.
no, I will. I was going to say thank you also to the entire team and Patty, because this is exactly the information that we asked to see, and it's pretty much all here. I have, in a lot of ways, this is the type of thing we asked to see from the administration and from special education and from our district, which is going to save us a lot of dollars and bring our kids back into North Kingstown if it's appropriate. So I'm excited about that. I'm concerned, obviously, about funding, as Mr. Welch said, but I think we need to explore it. I think we need to take the next step to explore it. Just a quick question. I'm assuming you're going to be changing the heating system at the admin building from that's probably too detailed. We need to talk about that.
We are looking into that. I don't know if that can fit into these numbers or not, but it's kind of a separate kind of project because the savings on what we would be spending on electricity. But it's definitely we're looking at
and
it.
Talked about for so many years,
Yeah.
the cost of heating that building with electric, and you can imagine it's a big building. So the full-day K question about the cost, I was going to ask the same question, John, so that's not part of this particular. And also talking to CLAC, and that would be great if Kathy Perry would present what she did in Charahoe. I think that would be really helpful to the committee. So wrapping up, I'm pretty much repeating everything everyone said. But I think that we should go forward to at least the stage of getting the numbers, getting the drawings to explore it.
Mr. Welch, I see your hand up again. And Mr. Buscharden.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I also appreciate the fact that you took the time to make this presentation. It was one of my concerns that I needed to really see something in black and white. So I thank you for making the effort.
You're welcome.
Well, you better enjoy all this while it lasts, Dr. Lindsay.
It was usually short-lived.
And then Mr. Cerisi.
Ms. King, the question about the heating brought another question into my head, is wouldn't it make sense, provided everything goes the way you figure, right, that as the changes are made to the administration, but it wouldn't make sense to be doing the heating change as well? I mean,
Oh, no, we absolutely would have to do it at the same time, but the numbers on any of those savings are not included in here.
I got you. So you are thinking of doing it simultaneously, just that you didn't have the, okay.
Yeah, we'd have to, because it would probably be pretty extensive work.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to do it
Right,
otherwise.
but those numbers are not in here.
And the other question I have is, granted, I'm not an architect, but I'm a contractor. Contracting business, we typically don't charge fees for quotations. Is there a reason why we have to pay the architect? Aren't there architects that will provide this type of consultation as part of their package?
We're not asking for a quotation. We're asking for architectural drawings and options that can be done with a building. The admin building is going to require an absolute change of use from administration to children, students being in that building. So this is much more than asking an architect to throw together a couple numbers or even to get a per square foot cost. The per square footage cost would likely be very misleading. And I did speak to the architect that we use in depth about it. He was concerned about that because he can certainly throw some of those numbers together, but because the work is so extensive, it's rather extensive at DE too, because I don't know how recent you've been into any of those classrooms, but every single classroom just about has a bathroom in it. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's not as accurate throwing a build-out cost of $20 per square foot, say, because of all the extensive work that might need to be done on both buildings, especially the admin building.
So, in other words, you're saying architects don't do that kind of thing for free?
Well, this is much more than just a proposal or a quote. We're really asking for some detailed information and drawings. It's going to make us a little bit further down the line also, though, if we decide that we can move forward with the project. So it's more than, somebody coming in and slapping a few numbers on a piece of paper and saying, maybe $20 to $40 per square foot is what you're going to get. This is much more detailed than that, with all the regulations you're going to have to follow, the changes you'll have to make, the code changes, ramps, firewalls, all that.
Thank you.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation at this time.
Second. I have one clarification. I asked this earlier, Ms. King, but the $15,000 we're using for the architect, because this is a one-time sort of deal, we're taking this out of fund balance. Am I correct? Not.
That's correct. And so you would be voting tonight to approve a transfer of not to exceed $15,000 from fund balance to CIP. And right now, and this number is pretty solid, we have approximately $955,000 in our fund balance.
All right. So we have a motion on the table and a second. Are there any further questions? Great. Lorraine, could we take a roll call vote, please?
Linda Avanzado.
Yes?
John Biscardin.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. That brings us to item 4C, update on the Facilities Subcommittee charge. This has been included in your packet. And when I looked through it, Mr. Welch, I saw that it looked rather similar to the old charge. So could you tell the committee what changes were made? I saw that some of your proposed changes are not on there anymore, so that's why I'm asking what changes are on there.
The only change that I see on there that I was aware of was adding back in the Director of Student
School
Personnel as an addition. I think that's the only change. Mrs. King, is that the only change?
And the teacher.
And the teacher?
From when it was presented a month ago.
So are we at the original charge?
No, actually, when you look at this, what's a little bit more different, what's more extensive about this is that we've also added the Director of Public Works from the town of North Kingstown as an actual member of the committee, and also expanded the members from the mechanical, plumbing, and engineering community as an actual member, a general contractor as an actual member, and someone from the grounds and civil community. So we've expanded the makeup of the committee to include somebody with all of those skills as an actual part of the committee.
All right.
For a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those who don't approve, disapprove? Yes. Opposed? Thank you. All right. Hearing none, motion passes. That brings us to item D, policies. The first policy that you have on your list is kind of an update on the wording of the flyer distribution. I had a request from Dr. Auger to just reword this policy a little bit because we've had an extensive number of requests for flyers and that they go home with kids, and this gives it not necessarily that they have to go home with kids, but they can go into the listserv. But it changes. The wording before was a little bit of two negatives, and so this time we just say what you can do. And so that was the purpose, is to make it more readable. So is there a motion to approve
So moved.
KDCA? All right, motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, the next two policies are policies for deletion, and I did send out today, we had a question from a citizen whose email came around, and actually he called me this morning, and so we had a chance to talk. But I bring to the committee that in April of 2011, so this is more than a year ago, we actually had a policy that was called Guidelines to Recruit, Support, and Retain Highly Effective Staff that was written by Ben Scungio, our attorney. And in that, he allowed various things like that we do give preference to people who live here in North Kingstown for our hiring. But it is a may, it is not a must, because in that way we can make sure that the qualified people are interviewed, not necessarily only because they're from North Kingstown. And as part of that policy, it was that we were supposed to delete a few policies, but we had not put those on our schedule, and we can't just say we're deleting them and like silently have them go away. We really do have to formally agree to delete them. And so when we were talking about this policy the other day, we realized that we had not deleted these two policies, and they're both under the policy that we adopted a year and a half ago. So that is why we are putting them before the committee today, rather than when the initial GD, what is that, GD?
GCD. GDD1.
GCF was passed. So, yes, there's a lot of similar letters.
You don't know what that is.
That is the reasoning that we have these two for deletion today. So I'll go down the road here. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just thank you for clarifying that. I know there was some confusion about that earlier, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
So you're approving the deletion of both the policies then?
Correct.
Okay.
Because they are redundant.
Correct.
That's the only reason these are being deleted.
Right.
Redundant,
Okay.
definitely.
Mrs. Avanzato.
I just want to thank you, Kim, for your work on the policies, because it's so nice when we get an email trying to ask us a question, and yes, we've already done it. It's actually already there in the policy, and we recently did it, so that was great. It was excellent.
All right. So is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the deletion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to new business, the discussion of our biennial organization meeting. And this is more of just, I sent out an email to everyone, but I wanted to make sure that people knew what were happening. It basically will be that our biennial meeting, which is when we have new people elected, is held on the first Monday in December, and this year that is December 3rd. That is merely a meeting where we will be only with the town council to do our swearing in. We will do our swearing in over at the Beechwood, and then we can stay if we would like to watch the town council pick their president. But we will come back over here to do our vote for our chair and vice chair. And then that's about it. At the town, when we are at the town council at Beechwood, we will give out our certificates then. So our certificates to say thank you to members. And part of this kind of came about in the discussion because we knew Mr. Welch was going to be over there for his swearing in, and we wanted to make sure, we knew that if he had to pick between the school committee or the town council, he would not pick the school committee.
You're wrong.
So,
You're definitely wrong.
He's incoming and outgoing at the same time.
but also we want to make sure that we say something in that we've had Mrs. Benson, who had served many years, not only on the school committee, but also as a teacher in our town. So we wanted to make sure that we could wish her well with her time, too. So that was also part of the reason why holding it over there together for that part of the meeting. So, is there any other suggestions, questions about what that meeting will encompass?
Not that it means anything to me, but you used to do your committees.
The last two times we have done committees at our first meeting after we have the entire school committee seated. So I think we'll continue to wait because,
Smoother.
yeah, it's just a little smoother.
Doesn't mean anything to me.
If you want to serve on one of our subcommittees, you're more than welcome.
All right, so that brings us to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments? Okay. Are there any citizens who would like to come up and comment? All right, seeing none, we have our reports, and unless somebody has a special report, I'm ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
No.
Adjourn into executive session, so we can have the last part of our...
Can I make a comment?
advice. Yes.
On this special occasion, I know that Mr. Welch will not be able to make our next meeting. I would...
No, he's here.
Are you going to be at our next meeting, Mr. Welch? I
We have
didn't
all
realize
thought that.
We all said he wasn't going to be here tonight, but he showed up.
But I was just going to say thank you, Mr. Welch, for your service on the school committee and for your support for the things that are going on in this district. It is much appreciated. I'll say it anyway, and I'll say it again.
I'm humbled.
Now, please, take some time off and don't come next time.
All right, so we are adjourned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Buskard, you're ready to adjourn into executive session?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much.
Military
Thank you,
answer,
everyone.
he's ready.
It was a nice meeting. Can we go in there?